I turned the camera on and everything I wanted to say just flew out of my head. Completely. So okay. The season out here is kind of winding down, so there's not much to do, and with it heating up, it'll be in the 90s this week, so we're pretty much all kind of staying inside with the air conditioning on, with the exception of me, who's doing chores today. I've been doing laundry for 2 days now, and it's the third, and that's what happens when you get a bunch of windy and cloudy and rainy days and you can't really do laundry because everything is so dependent on the weather outside. It builds up, and so sometimes it'll take you a few days to get through all of it, especially when there's 3 of us to do laundry for. So I'm working on that. Hopefully either today or tomorrow will be the last day of laundry, and then I can just shut up inside with the air conditioner on and read and not worry about being out in the heat. But I also know that since we stay here year round and it gets up to 120, 130 degree days, this is definitely a cakewalk compared to that. I don't love the hotter temperatures, but I know it's just something I deal with to get to be in the desert out here. So since it's a quieter week, people are laundry timer. So I typically like to have multiple books going on at once so that I can, depending on my mood, I can pick and choose which to pick up instead of only having one active at a time. Then I have to focus on that one, whether I'm in the mood for it or not. So I like to have one audio book, a physical book, and maybe a couple of ebooks going at a time. I have to sneeze. While I'm doing chores, it's too hot for me to have headphones on out in the sunlight, so I'm not going to be listening to an audiobook until I'm done with all the chores and can go inside and have headphones on without worrying about sweating so much. As far as physical books, I have about a third left of Bare Air Bones in the Midnight Soil, and I'm really loving the vampire bits of it, and we've finally gotten more into our third point of view, where we only got like a tiny glimpse of it in the beginning. So I'm liking that. I like it when all of our characters kind of meet up and they're all in the same place or the same time frame, or or at least a couple of them are together instead of just being so isolated, because we know that the POVs all intertwine at some point or another, and we're getting to see how in the present, in Alice's point of view, she meets up with one, whereas in the past timelines we're seeing that one meet up with a different point of view. So I'm really liking that. I like seeing how they're interconnected and how those relationships and things play out. But I'm not really in the mood to hold a physical book right now, especially with as much as I have to get up to go check on the laundry and stuff. So it's a lot easier to just have my iPad out with my Kindle app open. So as far as ebooks, I was reading And I Darken by Kirsten White, and I thought the premise was really interesting according to the synopsis, where it was this brother and sister duo get kind of abandoned in an enemy empire, and they kind of have to find either their way back to home or a new home, and like their loyalties are tested and shift and everything when they kind of befriend the Sultan's son. But what I didn't realize, I'm 47% of the way through now, and what I didn't realize is the first 40% of the book, all of the characters are literally 13 and under, and after the 40%, I think there's a two or so year time jump, so they're all finally in their teenagers, they're kind of growing up. But I didn't expect I would be reading, and you don't really get that from the synopsis, so I didn't expect I would be reading basically about kids, super young, and it's just not something I'm in the mood for right now. And it's nothing on the writing. I usually really like Kirsten White's writing, and it's good writing. I'm not interested in that age range of character with the darker, heavier themes right now. And so I think that one's gonna be a DNF for now. I'll probably pick it back up a chapter here or there at a time and just kind of take more time with it instead of sitting down and really trying to get through good chunks of it at a time. But my Libby hold for the favorites came in, and there's 3 other people in line behind me, so I'm gonna try to speed through that one a little bit quicker, just so the people that have the holds after me can get a chance to read it. But so I'm 33% through the favorites, and it's about ice dancing, I think. Let me see. It's about a figure skating couple and their journey to the Olympics. And you know, the synopsis says that some big event happens at an Olympic Games that brings the partnership to a clashing end, and 10 years later they're going back to do a documentary about it, and she doesn't want other people telling her story, so she's gonna, the main character Kat, she wants to tell her side of the story while the documentary is airing. And so far it's okay. I'm not loving it, but I'm not hating it. I like it. The characters are pretty bratty. Kat, she's very singularly focused on her goals and her wants, and not really in tune with communicating with her partner, who is also her romantic interest, and they've kind of grown up together, but she's not communicating with him. It's all about what she wants, and she kind of steamrolls him, and he goes along with it because he loves her, until we get to the point where there's a clash. And something kind of happened 30% of the way in, where I felt like that should have been closer to the 50% mark of the book. So it's reading pretty slow to me. I don't know if things will pick up more. And you know, I thought it would be a fitting time to be reading it now, considering the actual Olympics are going on, but I don't know, there's something that's not quite holding my interest, so I find myself not wanting to pick it, like I'll pick it up for a chapter here and there at a time, but not wanting to just really sink into it yet. It's not gripping me very strongly, but I do like it. And the writing's good. I can't connect to any of the characters really. I do like the documentary, the interview style, where they've got, it's not told completely in a documentary interview style, but there's bits woven in between, like a chapter or two every few chapters, and I really like that. I find it interesting that so far there's 2 characters that you would have expected to have heard from that you don't hear from in the documentary yet, so it'll be interesting to see, since what I thought would be the big climax actually wasn't. It'll be interesting to see what the real climax is going to be. But like I said, it's not gripping me right now, so I'm not excited to just kind of sink into it and not put it down yet. So that one's being read in smaller chunks too. So, but since it is a library book and I've got people waiting on it after me, I'm trying not to be too slow with it. So I will hopefully finish it before I have to return it. So that's what I'm working on this week. I think so far the big issue I'm having connecting with Kat in this is that I agree with Heath, her old skating partner, who said, you know, the entire time you've said don't trust them, and then now all of a sudden you're best friends with them, and she's being swept up into a world of fame and fortune and luxury while chasing her goals and not even considering that she's in a den of snakes, basically. You know, she's becoming just like them, and she's an insufferable brat. I really, so far, her character has not been redeemed at all in this, and, I'm rooting for the other guy. So I guess it'll be interesting to see whether there'll be a redemption arc for her as it goes along. I'm under 40% still, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any bit of redeeming quality, if she pulls through or not, or who the true, I guess, villain is. I don't know if there's going to be a happy ending in this. I don't know if there's going to be a true happy ending, or how it's going to be, how the resolution is going to look. So it'll be interesting, but I'm not really rooting for any of the characters. I mean, there's one guy I'm rooting for, but even now he's a little iffy. If he lets his hatred and his need for revenge to truly change who he is, and I'm not going to be rooting for anyone in this story. So I think that's my main issue, is just I love when there's a flaw, when the characters are flawed, because no one is truly perfect, but I don't like it when they feel insufferable, and so I'm not really connecting with them. Okay, I changed who I'm rooting for. I'm not rooting for Heath. Currently, he's being a little bit of a jerk. I do like him better than Kat, but I am rooting for Ellis. Ellis he's messy, but he's not, he doesn't hide his mess, so I love him. I'm rooting for Ellis, and I'm rooting for Garrett, and that's about it. Those are the only two that I really like, but hopefully, now that Garrett and Kat have opened up to each other a little bit, have kind of let go of a couple secrets, hopefully they'll, I don't know, hopefully that their friendship can save it. I'm still not really rooting for Kat. She's single-mindedly focused on one thing, and that's winning, and nothing else will do. And I'm all for chasing after your goals, but not at the expense of everything else and everyone else you care about. So she's so single-minded right now in her focus to win at the expense of all relationships with everyone else, that I'm not loving it. But I do. Ellis is very funny, and Garrett's a sweetheart, so I'm rooting for them. I'm not really rooting for anyone else right now. So I finished The Favorites a few days ago, and I have some thoughts. First of all, I didn't know that it was described as a loose retelling of Wuthering Heights, and looking back on it now, it does make sense. I mean, it's right down to the names, Heath and Kat, but it felt like the story was trying to be too tethered to that type of narrative of following the Wuthering Heights formula, and there was a lot of drama that was just being extended out for drama's sake, in my opinion. I think overall it just dragged on a little too long. I did end up giving it 3 stars. About the 50% mark, something happened, and I really liked the parallelism of that happening, like, being a tie-in to one of the opening scenes of the book, but I think it could have ended around there and I would have been satisfied with the story. Um, but it just kept dragging on. Every time it felt like there was the climax of the story, something else would happen, and it just kept going and going and going, and a lot of it felt like drama for drama's sake, in my opinion. And a lot of it could have been avoided if the characters would just communicate properly. That really annoyed me, is the miscommunication or the lack of communication trope. At about the 80% mark, finally the characters are mature because time has passed and they're literally in their 30s. When we started it off at, they were, 16, 17, somewhere in there. So by the time they hit their 30s at the 80% mark, I was okay with more of the characters. I guessed what the big scandal at the end was going to be, but not exactly who was behind that plot point, and it felt unsatisfying of an end to me that we never really found out why certain characters had the motivations they did. And there was nothing really done with the documentary style plot point to it. The documentary ends, and the last scene is the characters being like, "Oh, they're still talking about that documentary, yeah." Um, it felt a little pointless to use that format, but I did like how the documentary showed how different events could be twisted just based on perspective or who's talking about it. But you never really get a sense of trust with any of the narrators that what any of them is saying is the truth to what really happened. And I don't know, for the most part, I didn't really like any of the characters. They each had their moments, but it was frustrating. The lack of communication was frustrating, and there's just a lot of drama and no real conclusion behind it. Just all of a sudden, you're okay that something turned out this way. I don't know. So I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars, and that's the favorites.